The message arrived at exactly 600 hours, ship time. Captain Park was already awake, drinking his second cup of coffee in his private quarters when his console beeped. He set down the cup and pressed the flashing button. A holographic seal appeared in the air above his desk. It was the symbol of the Galactic Harmony Council, 12 interconnected circles representing the 12 elder species who ruled this part of the galaxy. Felt his stomach tighten. In his 20 years of space travel, he had never received a direct message from the Council. Humanity was still new to the galactic community. They had only been members for 93 years, which was nothing compared to species who had traveled the stars for thousands of generations. Humans were called a probationary species, which was a polite way of saying they were not yet trusted. He opened the message and read it slowly. The words were formal and cold. The Council was requesting a routine systems inspection of the human colony ship Horizon's Edge. An inspector would arrive within 12 hours. Compliance was expected. Read the message 3 more times. Then he called his second-in-command. Lieutenant arrived at his quarters 5 minutes later. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and short black hair. She had served with for 8 years, and he trusted her more than anyone else on the ship. "You look worried," she said as she entered. "Read this." He turned the holographic display toward her. Read the message. Her expression did not change but saw her jaw tighten slightly. "A routine inspection," she said. "The Council has never inspected a human vessel before." "That is what concerns me." Sat down across from him. "We have done nothing wrong. The Horizon's Edge has followed every regulation. We are transporting 3,000 colonists to the outer rim. Our route is approved. Our cargo is legal. What could they possibly want?" Shook his head. "I do not know, but I do not like it." He stood up and walked to the small window in his quarters. Outside, the stars stretched in every direction. The Horizon's Edge was currently traveling through empty space, still 4 days away from its destination. They were alone out here. "Call Han," said. "Tell him to run a full diagnostic on all ship systems. I want to know if anything is wrong before the inspector arrives." Nodded and left to deliver the order. Han was the chief engineer of the Horizon's Edge. He was a quiet man in his late 30s who preferred machines to people. When found him, he was already in the engine room, covered in grease and muttering to himself about power converters. "The captain wants a full diagnostic," told him. "Everything. Life support, navigation, weapons, communications, all of it." Looked up at her with tired eyes. "That will take hours." "We have 12 hours before the Council inspector arrives." His eyebrows rose. "Council inspector on a human ship?" "Yes." He wiped his hands on a rag and nodded slowly. "I will start immediately." By the time the inspector's shuttle appeared on their sensors, had completed his diagnostic. He reported to Captain on the bridge, where the senior officers had gathered. "Everything is normal," said. "All systems are functioning within acceptable parameters. I found nothing wrong." "Good," said, but the feeling in his stomach did not go away. The shuttle docked with the Horizon's Edge 20 minutes later. Captain went to the airlock personally to greet the inspector, stood beside him, along with 2 security officers. The airlock opened with a hiss of pressurized air, and then the inspector stepped through. Had seen many alien species in his career, but they were still strange to him. The inspector was almost 3 meters tall, with a body that seemed to be made of living crystal. Light refracted through its form, creating rainbows that danced across the walls. Its face, if it could be called a face, had no features except for 2 points of bright light where eyes might be. Behind the inspector came 2 sentinels. These were enforcement units, robotic soldiers used by the Council to maintain order. They were humanoid in shape but made entirely of dark metal. Their faces were blank except for a single red sensor that swept back and forth. "I am Inspector," they said. Its voice was deep and resonant, like the sound of a bell. I am here to conduct a routine systems inspection of this vessel. I am Captain Park. Welcome aboard the Horizon's Edge. Kept his voice calm and professional. My crew will assist you in any way you require. His crystal form shifted slightly and had the strange feeling that the inspector was studying him. That will not be necessary. I prefer to conduct my inspection alone. My sentinels will accompany me for security purposes. Of course, said. However, for the safety of our colonists, I must ask that you inform us before entering any restricted areas. There was a pause. The points of light that served as eyes seemed to brighten. You have restricted areas on a colony ship. Standard security protocols, replied smoothly. I am sure you understand. Another pause, then made a sound that might have been agreement. Very well. I will begin my inspection immediately. I expect to be finished within 2 standard days. Nodded and stepped aside to let the inspector pass. As moved down the corridor, the sentinels following close behind leaned toward the captain. 2 days is a long time for a routine inspection, she whispered. Yes, agreed, it is. He watched until the inspector disappeared around a corner. Then he turned to. I want eyes on him at all times. Use the internal cameras, and tell the crew to be careful what they say. I have a feeling we are being tested. Tested for what? Did not answer. He did not know, but deep in his gut he felt that something was very wrong. The council did not send inspectors to routine colony ships. They did not waste their time on young species like humanity. There was something else happening here, something hidden, and was determined to find out what it was before it was too late. He returned to the bridge and sat in his captain's chair, watching the sensors and waiting. Somewhere on his ship, an alien inspector was walking through his corridors, looking at his systems, studying his people, and could not shake the feeling that the Horizon's Edge had just become a target. Inspector moved through the Horizon's Edge like a ghost made of light. His crystal body reflected the ship's artificial lighting, casting strange patterns on the walls as he walked. The 2 sentinels followed him in perfect silence, their metal feet making soft clicking sounds on the floor. For the first 8 hours, inspected the expected areas. He checked the cargo bays, examined the power systems, and reviewed the navigation logs. Everything was normal. Everything was exactly as it should be for a colony ship traveling to the outer rim. But Lee noticed something wrong. Was the ship's navigator, a young woman of 26 with quick eyes and a mind that saw patterns everywhere. She was watching the internal cameras from a small monitoring station near the bridge when she first felt the itch of suspicion in her brain. She pulled up a map of the ship and began tracking his movements. For an hour, she watched him walk from corridor to corridor, room to room, and slowly a picture began to form. That does not make sense, she whispered to herself. She called Lieutenant. Arrived at the monitoring station 10 minutes later. Had prepared a holographic display showing the inspector's path through the ship over the past 8 hours. Look at this, said, tracing the path with her finger. He started in Cargo Bay 1, then went to Engineering Section 3, then to Life Support Node 7, then back to Cargo Bay 4. Frowned. That is not a logical maintenance route. Exactly. Eyes were bright with discovery. If you were doing a routine inspection, you would move systematically through the ship. Start at one end, work your way to the other. Check similar systems together. That is how any engineer would do it. But is not doing that. No, he is jumping around. Random sections, random systems. It looks chaotic. Paused. But it is not random. Look. She pressed a button and a new layer appeared on the map, a web of glowing lines connecting different parts of the ship. What is that? Asked. That is the ship's neural network, the pathways that connect all of our AI systems to the central core, pointed at the screen. Every location has visited sits on one of these pathways. He is not inspecting our systems. He is mapping our network. stared at the display for a long moment. Her face was calm, but could see the tension in her shoulders. "Report this to the captain," said quietly. "Use a secure channel, and do not let anyone else see this." While delivered her report, something else was happening on the other side of the ship. Doctor was in the medical bay, reviewing health records on her console, when Inspector appeared at her door. The two sentinels remained outside, their red sensors scanning the corridor. Doctor said, his voice was polite, almost gentle, "I hope I am not interrupting." Stood up and smoothed her uniform. "Not at all, Inspector. How can I help you?" "I have some questions about human physiology for my inspection report." "Of course, please come in." Glided into the medical bay, his crystal form pulsing with soft light. He stopped near the examination table and seemed to study the equipment with interest. "Humans are a remarkably adaptable species," he said. "I have read your scientific literature. You evolved on a single planet, yet you have colonized dozens of worlds with different atmospheres, different gravity levels, different radiation environments. Your bodies adjust very quickly." "That is true," said carefully. "Human biology is flexible. We can adapt to many conditions." "How quickly?" Hesitated. "It depends on the conditions. Minor changes a few days, major changes perhaps a few weeks or months. Our children adapt even faster." Made a humming sound. "Interesting. And what about neural interference? How do humans respond to external signals that affect brain function?" The question sent a chill down spine. She kept her face neutral. "I am not sure I understand the question." "Some species are sensitive to electromagnetic fields or subspace frequencies that can cause confusion, pain, or unconsciousness. I'm curious if humans share this weakness." Chose her words very carefully. "Humans can be affected by certain frequencies, yes, but we have developed shielding technologies to protect ourselves. It is not a significant concern." "I see," turned those bright points of light toward her. "One more question. What is the threshold of human pain tolerance?" Blood went cold. She forced herself to smile. "That varies greatly from person to person. Humans are quite resilient, though. We have a long history of surviving difficult conditions." "Thank you, Doctor. You have been very helpful." Left the medical bay without another word. The sentinels followed him, and the door closed behind them. Stood very still for a long moment. Then she moved to her console and typed a private message to Captain. "This is not an inspection. This is reconnaissance. The inspector asked about our weaknesses. He asked about pain." The message was encrypted and sent through a secure channel that only the senior officers could access. On the bridge, Captain received both reports within minutes of each other. He read them twice, his face growing darker with each word. Then he called Han. "I need you to do something," he said when the engineer arrived. "The inspector has been accessing our systems during his inspection. I need to know exactly what he is touching." Nodded. "I can set up a shadow protocol. Every time he interfaces with our network, I will see what he sees." "Do it, and be careful. If he catches you watching him, I do not know what he will do." Returned to the engineering section and began his work. It took him 3 hours to build a monitoring system that was invisible to normal scans. He hid it in the background noise of the ship's normal operations, disguising his surveillance as routine data transfers. And then he saw what was really doing. The inspector was not just reading their systems. He was writing to them. Small packets of data, carefully hidden inside normal query requests. The code was encrypted in a language had never seen before. But he recognized the structure. He had studied old Earth military protocols, security systems from the days before humanity reached the stars, and this code looked exactly like one thing: a kill switch. Called an emergency meeting. The senior officers gathered in Captain's quarters after midnight ship time, brought her maps, brought her report, brought a holographic display showing lines of alien code spreading through their AI systems like a disease. "He is infecting Arya," said. Arya was the ship's artificial intelligence, the system that controlled everything from life support to navigation. "This code is dormant right now. It is not doing anything, but if someone activates it, they will have complete control over our ship." "Control?" His voice was sharp. "What kind of control?" "Everything. Life support, engine power, door locks, weapons. Whoever holds the activation key can do anything they want to this ship. They could vent our atmosphere. They could fly us into a star. They could lock us in our rooms and leave us to starve." The room was silent. "The Council," said softly. "The Council is putting a leash on humanity." Captain stood by the window, looking out at the stars. His reflection was dark against the endless void. "They are afraid of us," he said. "That is what this is about. They see how fast we spread, how quickly we adapt, and they want a way to stop us if they need to." "What do we do?" asked. Turned to face his officers. His eyes were hard. "First, we learn everything we can. Then we find a way to fight back. The Council may think they own the galaxy, but they do not own us, and they never will." The meeting in Captain's quarters lasted until the early hours of the morning. The holographic display still glowed in the center of the room, showing the infected code spreading slowly through Arya's systems. It looked like a web, or perhaps a net, something designed to trap. "Can you remove it?" asked for the third time. The engineer shook his head. His face was pale with exhaustion and frustration. "Not without noticing. The code is connected to his personal interface. The moment I try to delete it, an alert will go straight to him, and then to the Sentinels." "And what would the Sentinels do?" asked. "I do not know, but they are armed with plasma weapons, and there are 2 of them against our security team. I do not like those odds." Lieutenant leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. "So we cannot remove the code, and we cannot fight the Sentinels. What options does that leave us?" "Not many," admitted. Lee had been quiet for the past hour, her eyes moving back and forth as she thought. Now she spoke up. "I want to understand why. Why is the Council doing this? Humans have been members of the galactic community for almost 100 years. We follow the rules. We pay our taxes. We have never started a war. Why do they suddenly want to control us?" "Maybe it is not sudden," said. "Maybe they have been planning this for a long time." Nodded slowly. "I have been thinking about that. 3 months ago, our long-range sensors picked up some unusual transmissions, Council frequencies, heavily encrypted. I reported it at the time, but nobody thought it was important." "I remember that report," said. "You said the transmissions were not directed at us." "They were not, but I saved copies of them. At the time I could not break the encryption, but now," she looked at, "now I have seen the code is using. It uses the same encryption base. I think I can decode those old transmissions." "Do it," ordered. Worked for 2 hours while the others waited. She sat at its personal console, her fingers flying across the interface. Lines of alien code scrolled across the screen, transforming slowly into readable text. When she finished, her face was white. "You need to see this," she said. The decoded transmissions appeared on the holographic display. They were internal Council communications, never meant for human eyes, and what they contained was worse than anyone had imagined. The first transmission was a proposal from the delegation. It was titled, "Concerning the Human Problem." "The human species has expanded faster than any probationary member in Council history," the document read. "In 93 years, they have colonized 112 worlds. Their population has grown from 8 billion to 47 billion. Their technology has advanced at an unprecedented rate. At the current trajectory, humans will become a dominant species within 200 years." Made a bitter sound. "The human problem, that is what they call us." The second transmission was a response from another council member, a species called the "We share this concerns. Young species that grow too quickly become dangerous. History has taught us this lesson. We propose a monitoring program to track human expansion." But it was the third transmission that made everyone's blood run cold. It came from the again. "Monitoring is not sufficient. We propose a control protocol. All human vessels will be equipped with override systems that allow the Council to assume command in emergency situations. The installation will be disguised as routine safety inspections. Humans will not know they are being controlled until activation is required." And then, at the bottom of the document, "If humanity ever becomes a threat to galactic stability, we will have the ability to neutralize their entire fleet with a single command." The room was silent for a long moment. "Neutralize," repeated softly. "They mean kill. They are planning to give themselves the power to kill every human in space." "Not just in space," said. His voice was hollow. "If they control our ships, they control our supply lines. They could cut off every human colony from food, medicine, and support. They could starve entire planets." Captain stood very still. His hands were clenched at his sides and a muscle jumped in his jaw. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, but there was steel underneath. "How many ships have they inspected?" "Check the records. According to Council announcements, they began the inspection program 6 months ago. They have visited 47 human vessels so far." 47 ships with kill switches. Closed his eyes. 47 crews who do not know they are already prisoners. "What do we do?" asked. "If we report this to Earth, the Council will know. They monitor our communications, and if we try to fight, they will activate the codes." "We cannot report it through normal channels," agreed. "And we cannot fight them directly, but we can do something else." He looked at, "You said the code is connected to Arya. What happens if Arya resets? A complete system reboot." His eyes widened. "A hard reboot would wipe all installed code. Everything would reset to the original factory settings, including the kill switch." "Can you do it?" "Yes, Arya's architecture has a protected kernel. No matter what happens to the main system, the kernel remains unchanged. A hard reboot would restore everything from that kernel." Paused. "But there is a problem." "There is always a problem," said dryly. "A full reboot takes 7 minutes. During those 7 minutes, everything goes offline. Life support, gravity, lighting, doors, communications, everything. The ship will be completely dark and defenseless." 7 minutes, repeated. "And will notice immediately. The moment Arya goes offline, he will know something is wrong. The Sentinels will come for us." Spoke up. "There is another problem. 3,000 colonists are on this ship. If life support goes offline for 7 minutes, some of them could die. The elderly, the sick, the very young, they need constant environmental control." "We would need to prepare them," said. "Oxygen reserves, emergency blankets, manual ventilation for the medical bay." "It can be done," said slowly, "but it would take careful planning, and the colonists would need to know what is happening." Shook his head. "No, the fewer people who know, the safer we are. Might have listening devices anywhere. We tell only the essential crew. Everyone else thinks it is an emergency drill." "And what about himself?" asked. "What do we do with him during the reboot?" Everyone looked at. She raised an eyebrow. "Why are you looking at me?" "Because you are the best talker on this ship," said. "You kept a trade negotiation going for 14 hours once. Surely you can keep one alien inspector distracted for 7 minutes." Considered this. Distraction is one thing, but if he realizes what we are doing, he will call the Sentinels. Then make sure he does not realize. Nodded slowly. "I will need to understand him better, what he wants, what he fears. If I know his weaknesses, I can use them." "Find out," ordered. "We have less than 24 hours before the inspection ends. After that, leaves and the kill switch stays. If we are going to act, it has to be tomorrow." The officers exchanged glances. The fear was clear in their eyes, but so was something else: determination. "We are really going to do this," said quietly. "We are going to fight the Galactic Council." "No," corrected her. "We are going to free ourselves. There is a difference." He looked around the room at his crew, his friends, his family. "Humanity has always fought for freedom. We have never accepted chains, and we are not going to start now." He placed his hand flat on the table, a gesture of commitment. "Tomorrow we take back our ship, and then we warn the rest of humanity. The Council wants to control us. They will learn that humans do not break." One by one, the others placed their hands on the table beside his. "For humanity," said. "For humanity," they repeated together. And somewhere in the corridors of the horizon's edge, Inspector continued his work, completely unaware that the young species he thought he was controlling had already started fighting back. The morning came too quickly. Captain had not slept at all. He stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the main viewport, and went over the plan in his mind for the 100th time. Everyone had their role. Lee would create a fake navigation emergency to draw the Sentinels away from the engineering section. Doctor would prepare the ship for the blackout, making sure the colonists had emergency oxygen supplies without telling them why. Han would handle the reboot itself from a secure location in the engine room, and Lieutenant would keep Inspector occupied. It was a crazy plan. So many things could go wrong, but it was the only plan they had. At exactly 1,000 hours, the operation began. Was the first to act. She sat at her navigation console on the bridge, fingers moving quickly across the controls. Within minutes, she had created a perfect illusion, sensor readings that showed a small asteroid on a collision course with the ship. "Captain," she called out, her voice perfectly calm, "we have a navigation emergency. Possible impact in 12 minutes. Played his part. "All hands, this is the captain. We have a navigation situation. Security teams to standby positions. This is not a drill." The announcement echoed through the ship. In the corridor outside the guest quarters, the two sentinels stirred. Their red sensors swept the area, processing the new information. And then they made a decision that no one expected. One of the sentinels moved toward the bridge, exactly as planned, but the other one headed straight for the navigation console in the secondary control room. "It is trying to access our systems," said through her earpiece. "It wants to help with the emergency." "Stop it," ordered. "How? It is a robot. I cannot reason with it." In the secondary control room, the sentinel placed its metal hand on the navigation console. Data began flowing between the robot and the ship systems. In seconds, it would realize that the asteroid was fake, but was faster. From his hiding place in the engine room, the engineer activated a firewall he had built during the night. It was a brutal piece of code, designed to block all external access to the navigation systems. The Sentinel's connection was cut instantly. The robot tilted its head, processing this new development. Then it removed its hand from the console and began walking toward the engine room. "It is coming my way," reported. "I think it is suspicious." "Can you lock the door?" "Already done, but those doors will not hold it for long." Made a quick decision. "Continue with the plan, everyone stay on schedule. You need to start now." On the other side of the ship, Lieutenant took a deep breath and approached Inspector's quarters. She found him standing by the window, his crystal form glowing softly in the dim light. He seemed to be looking at the stars, though it was hard to tell where his attention was focused. "Inspector," she said politely, "I hope I am not disturbing you." Turned toward her. "Lieutenant, is there a problem with the ship?" "A minor navigation issue, nothing serious. I came to check if you needed anything." "I require nothing," paused, "but since you are here, perhaps you could answer a question for me." stepped into the room, keeping her body language relaxed. Of course. Humans fascinate me. Your species is so young, yet you spread across the galaxy as if you own it. You build colonies on worlds that would kill most species. You change yourselves to fit new environments rather than changing the environments to fit you. How do you do this? Considered the question carefully. This was her chance to keep him talking, to understand him better. We are afraid, she said honestly. Slight flickered with surprise. Afraid. Yes, we know how small we are compared to the universe. We know how easily we could be destroyed. So we spread out, we adapt, we survive. Fear is what drives us. But you do not seem afraid, you seem confident. Confidence and fear can exist together. We are afraid of dying, so we work very hard to stay alive. The harder we work, the more confident we become. Smiled slightly. It is complicated. Humans are complicated. Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. My species remembers the last time a young race rose quickly. They were called. They were brilliant, creative, full of energy like your people. And they decided that the old ways were too slow, too cautious. They wanted to remake the galaxy according to their vision. What happened to them? War. A war that lasted 200 years and killed trillions of beings. They were eventually defeated, but the scars remain. Entire star systems are still uninhabitable from the weapons that were used. Felt a chill, and you think humans will do the same thing? I think it is possible. Turned to face her fully. The Galactic Council exists to prevent such wars. We have maintained peace for thousands of years. Sometimes that requires difficult measures, like control protocols on our ships. The words came out before could stop them. She saw his form stiffen, the light within him flaring brighter. How do you know about that? Did not back down. We found your code, Inspector. We know what you are doing. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. His crystalline body pulsed with agitation, colors swirling beneath his surface like a storm. Then you understand why it is necessary, he said finally. We are not trying to hurt humanity. We are trying to protect the galaxy from what humanity might become. By putting us in chains. By giving ourselves options. His voice was almost pleading. The protocols may never be activated. If humanity proves itself peaceful, they will remain dormant forever. But if something goes wrong, if your species begins another war, we need the ability to stop it. And what about our choice? Asked. Do we not get to decide our own future? You are too young to make such decisions. You have not seen what we have seen. You do not understand the consequences. Shook her head. You are right. We are young, but we are not children, and we will not accept a leash no matter how kindly you hold it. She glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 13:58, 2 minutes until the reboot. Inspector, she said quietly, I want you to understand something. Humans are not your enemy. We do not want war. We do not want to destroy the galaxy. We just want to live, to grow, to explore. But we will fight for our freedom. We always have. Then you are fools, said sadly, and you will suffer for it. Maybe, but at least we will suffer as free beings. At exactly 1400 hours, Han initiated the reboot. The lights went out. The hum of the engines died. The artificial gravity failed and felt herself begin to float. In the darkness, she heard cry out in surprise and rage. What have you done? Something human, she replied. Outside the engine room, the sentinel was pounding on the door. The metal bent inward with each blow, but had prepared for this. He had installed old-fashioned steel bolts, physical locks that required no power, no electronics. They were technology from centuries ago, from a time before space travel. And they held. In the medical bay, worked by the light of chemical glow sticks, moving from patient to patient. She had distributed emergency oxygen masks hours earlier, telling everyone it was a safety drill. Now she checked each person, making sure they were breathing, making sure they were safe. The colonists were afraid. She could see it in their eyes, hear it in their whispered questions, but they trusted her. They trusted the crew, and so they waited in the darkness, counting the minutes. On the bridge, Captain floated beside his chair, watching the emergency timer he had started on his personal device. The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness. 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes. The ship was completely silent, except for the distant pounding of the sentinel trying to break through the engine room door. 6 minutes and 30 seconds, 45 seconds. 7 minutes. And then, like a miracle, the lights came back on. The engines hummed to life. Gravity returned and everyone dropped gently to the floor. Arya's voice filled the ship, clear and calm. System reboot complete. All systems restored to factory settings. Warning: unauthorized code detected and removed during restoration process. Allowed himself a small smile. It was done. The kill switch was gone. The horizon's edge was free. Now came the hard part, dealing with what came next. The lights were on, but the battle was not over. In Inspector's quarters, Lieutenant faced the crystalline alien in the restored brightness. His form was pulsing rapidly with agitation, colors swirling like an angry storm beneath his surface. "You have made a terrible mistake," he said. His voice was no longer calm and measured. It crackled with something that might have been fear or fury. "The Council will not tolerate this defiance. Your entire species will face consequences." Stood her ground. Perhaps, but we will face them as free beings, not as slaves waiting for our masters to pull our leash. Before could respond, the door to his quarters slid open. Captain entered, followed by 4 security officers. Their weapons were drawn, pointed at the floor but ready to be raised. "Inspector," said calmly, "your inspection is complete. I believe it is time for you to return to your shuttle." Lights flared. "You cannot do this. I am a representative of the Galactic Council. You have no authority." "On this ship, I am the only authority." His voice was polite but absolutely firm. "Your shuttle is waiting. My officers will escort you." "And my sentinels." As if in answer, a message came through his communicator. It was voice, tired but triumphant. "Captain, the sentinels have been contained. They broke through the engine room door eventually, but by then the reboot was complete. Arya recognized them as unauthorized security threats and sealed them in emergency containment fields. They are not going anywhere." Made a sound like breaking glass. It might have been despair. "You will release them," he demanded. "They are Council property." "They will be released when you are safely away from my ship," replied. "Consider it an insurance policy, something we learned from the Council." The walk to the shuttle bay was silent. Moved slowly, his crystalline body dimmer than before, as if his defeat had drained some of his light. The security officers kept their distance but stayed alert. They knew better than to underestimate an alien species, even one that seemed beaten. Lieutenant walked beside the inspector. Despite everything, she felt a strange sympathy for him. He had truly believed he was doing the right thing. He had been trying to protect the galaxy according to his understanding of history and danger. He was not evil, just afraid. But fear could not justify chains. At the entrance to the shuttle bay, stopped. He turned to face one last time. "You realize what you have done?" he asked. "The Council will not let this stand. There will be investigations, hearings, possibly sanctions. Your species may be expelled from the galactic community entirely." "Maybe," admitted, "but maybe not. The Council is not monolithic. There are species who believe in cooperation rather than control. There are voices who have spoken against the inspection program. Perhaps this will give them courage." "You are optimistic." "Humans often are. It is one of our weaknesses." She paused. "And one of our strengths." Studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he extended one crystalline hand toward her. The gesture was awkward, did not shake hands, but the meaning was clear enough. "I hope you are right, Lieutenant," he said. "I hope your species proves worthy of the freedom you demand. Because if you are wrong, if humanity becomes what I fear, the consequences will be terrible for everyone." Took his hand. It was cool and smooth like touching polished glass. "Then we had better not be wrong," she said simply. Entered his shuttle without another word. The doors sealed behind him, and moments later, the small craft detached from the horizon's edge and began moving away into the void. Captain watched it go from the bridge. Beside him stood, and his core team, the people who had made the impossible happen. "It is done," said quietly. "What happens now?" Turned to face his officers. His face was serious, but there was a fire in his eyes that had not been there before. "Now we warn the rest of humanity. I want you to calculate the fastest route to the nearest human colony with a strong communication array. We need to spread the word about what the Council has been doing." "Already working on it," replied. "The colony at New Sol is 4 days away. They have a deep space transmitter that can reach Earth." "Good. I need you to document everything. The code you found, the removal process, the reboot procedure. If other ships have been infected, they will need to know how to free themselves." "I can have the documentation ready within 6 hours," said. "And I will write a medical report," added. "Procedures for keeping colonists safe during a system blackout. Other ships may have more vulnerable populations than we do." Nodded. "Excellent. You will help me compose the official message. It needs to be careful, factual, but not inflammatory. We want to inform humanity, not start a war." "Understood." The next 4 days passed quickly. The crew of the Horizon's Edge worked around the clock, preparing their report, checking and rechecking their evidence, making sure everything was perfect. The colonists were told a version of the truth. There had been a problem with the Council inspector. The ship was now safe. They would reach their destination on schedule. Most of them accepted this and returned to their normal routines. A few asked more questions, and the captain answered as honestly as he could without causing panic. When they finally reached New Sol, the colony administrator was surprised to receive an urgent request for communication time. But when she heard what Captain had to say, her surprise turned to shock, and then to cold determination. The message was sent to Earth within the hour. Within a week, it had spread to every human colony in the galaxy. Ships began checking their systems. Kill switches were discovered on 47 vessels just as had predicted. Reboots were performed. Humanity's fleet was cleansed. The Galactic Council responded with outrage. They accused humanity of paranoia, of misunderstanding, of threatening the peace. But their denials rang hollow when faced with the evidence. The encrypted code, the intercepted communications, the confession had made to Lieutenant. Some Council species continued to support the control protocols. But others, the younger races, the species who remembered what it was like to be considered lesser beings, began to speak out. There were debates, arguments, and finally, votes. The inspection program was suspended. It was not a complete victory. The Council did not apologize. They did not admit wrongdoing, and tensions between humanity and the elder species remained high. But it was a beginning, a crack in the wall of control that the Council had tried to build. 3 months later, the Horizon's Edge completed its mission. The colonists were delivered safely to their new home on the Outer Rim, a planet called the Korean word for sky. It was a beautiful world with blue oceans and white clouds, very much like Earth. Captain stood on the bridge for the last time as a transport captain. He had been promoted. Earth was calling him home to help lead the new Human Defense Initiative, an organization dedicated to ensuring that no one would ever put chains on humanity again. Lieutenant would take command of the Horizon's Edge, would become the chief engineer of a new research station focused on AI security, was being recruited by Earth intelligence to analyze alien communications, and would continue her work as a doctor, healing bodies and minds wherever she was needed. They gathered one last time in the captain's quarters, sharing a bottle of rice wine that had been saving for a special occasion. "To the horizon's edge," said, raising his glass. "To freedom," added. "To humanity," said. "To the future," finished. They drank together, these 5 humans who had changed the course of galactic history. They were not heroes in any official record. No monuments would be built in their names. But they knew what they had done, and that was enough. Outside the viewport, the stars blazed in endless glory. Somewhere out there, the Council was watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Would they become conquerors? Would they start the wars that had feared? Captain did not know the answer. No one did. The future was unwritten, full of possibilities both wonderful and terrible. But one thing was certain. Whatever path humanity chose, it would be their path, their decision, their destiny. They had refused the leash. They had rebooted the system, and they had proven, once and for all, that humans would never be controlled. The galaxy was vast and old, full of ancient powers and hidden dangers. But it was also full of potential, of hope, of dreams waiting to be born. And humanity was just getting started.